Hello and welcome everyone to our very first CSSR webinar of 2025. My name is David O'Reilly. I'm a second year master's candidate at the University of Ottawa's Religious Studies program. I'm also the host for today's webinar. I'm glad everyone could make it out and join us today. To start, I'd like to offer a territory acknowledgement. I acknowledge that today I personally am on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Chinantan, Mississauga, and Anishinaabe peoples on what is known as the Haldeman Tract. The Haldeman Tract is land promised to the Six Nations, including 10 kilometers on each side of the Grand River, which is just over there from me. I also acknowledge the enduring precedents and deep traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous peoples with whom we share this land today. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're coming together digitally from many different areas, maybe not even in Ontario, Canada, maybe some people are outside of Canada. I encourage you to research the Indigenous history of your own area and the land that you're on today. We are all treaty people with a responsibility to honor all of our relations. For today's webinar, our guest is Dr. Kahente Horn-Miller. Dr. Horn-Miller is an associate professor at Carleton University. She is a 2023 National 3M Teaching Fellow and currently the Associate Vice President, Indigenous Teaching, Learning, and Research. Today's presentation is titled Land as Relation, North-South Connections. Her research and teaching centered in the development of Haudenosaunee-specific research and pedagogical practice. Her research interests include Indigenous methodologies, Indigenous women, identity politics, colonization, Indigenous governments, and consensus-based decision-making. Her work and community-based research involves interpreting Haudenosaunee culture and bringing new life to old traditions. Thank you very much for joining us today. The
No,
presentation will be roughly 1 hour. We ask that each attendee remains muted during the presentation. The chat feature, however, will be open, so you can share your thoughts anytime you'd like. After the presentation, we'll have a Q&A session. During the sessions, if questions pop up, please ask them in the chat or quote unquote raise your hand using the virtual function, and we can call on you to mute your mic during the Q&A session. A reminder that today's presentation will be recorded and available to view on our YouTube channel at a later time, along with our other webinars. We encourage you to like and share this series with your students and friends. With that, I will pass it over to you, Dr. Horn-Miller. Thank you very much.
no. Kahente yujats, akskare wake ni I kanya newanjoto. What can you radung danas wagwego? I am Kahente. I'm Bear Clan, and I am Ganyaka. And my mother is from Gahnawage, and my late father was from Oswego Six Nations. I am also a guest in the unceded territory of the Algonquin people. I live and work in their territory in Ottawa. I'm a mother to four and a grandmother to one. So I appreciate that I've been invited to share my work with you as it relates to the idea of land as relation. What I'm going to do is talk about the progression of that work, where I started and where I am now, and how it's brought me into this position of making north-south connections, shall we say. Okay. So I am Kahente, and that means she walks ahead. I'm a mother. I am a sister. I'm an auntie. I'm a grandmother. I am a person who creates adobe bricks with my students on the land. I'm a sun dancer and I'm a traveler. So just to give you a little bit of sense of who I am as a Ganyakahaga mother and woman. Now, everything I do comes from that perspective as a mother and a woman first of my people. We have what's called the coming faces philosophy, which is similar to the seven generations philosophy. In fact, my people often would use that term, and I was using it until I found out that it actually was something that is used by the Algonquin people, and it relates, I think, to, if I recall correctly, to the seven grandfather teachings. So ours is actually, it means it's about the coming faces, those children yet unborn, and that we see their faces in the ground, and we think ahead in everything that we do. So that's where I come from and all that I do. Um, so I co-authored a book with Margaret Kress called Land as Relation, and it's about how teaching and learning through people, place, and practices is understood. And this is a compilation of writing from around the world, actually, by different people who are doing land-based learning. And so land-based learning or land as relation is something that as Indigenous folks around the world, we live that and we describe it in different ways. But when it comes right down to it, we are using different languages and different symbols and different um, spaces and places that we originate from to describe this. And what we're really talking about the same thing, and that is um, seeing our mother, the earth, as we are in relationship with her, and our job when we come to this world is to caretake her, and we call that our original instructions. So when we are teaching about land as relation, we do it in different ways. We do it through our languages, where um, Indigenous languages are not noun based, they are verb based. So when you are when you are talking in our languages, you are talking about you in relationship to the world around you. So for example, anit squara means a chair in Ganyageha. But when I say chair in English, it you see it in your mind exactly what I'm talking about. But when I say onit squarda means the thing that you rest your being upon. So it's about you in relationship to that object, right? And so that's what I mean by it. Our languages are describe our relationships to the world, to each other, to the natural world. And so when you speak them, you are speaking relationship. Now imagine that if our children, the very first thing that they hear, when they are born, if they hear our languages, our traditional indigenous languages, they are hearing the very first thing that they hear is about relationship. It's about them being in relationship to the family, to the mother, to the earth, because by the very nature of the language, that is what it describes. It's a very powerful thought. Um, and so, we are now finding ourselves teaching in universities and colleges and in high schools about land-based learning. We're teaching that. And we're teaching about embodiment and place and story as a way to connect our students who don't know, but also it's a way of reconnecting our students who do know. And it's about and connecting everyone to the natural world. And I think that's the biggest question that we have with regards to, the big issue of climate change and everyone's responsibility together and collectively is how do we teach those young people or those people in the world who have no connection, who don't feel it, who don't feel a sense of responsibility and accountability. How do we teach that? And so, in these university settings, we have the very special, very special. privilege, I think, of accessing those young people that are going to be the next leaders in Canada and elsewhere. And we have that ability, we have the responsibility to connect with them, I think, as Indigenous educators, but also with our counterparts as well. Um, to teach them what we know. It's a huge um, responsibility, and it's a huge privilege. And so, these land-based courses that we're teaching now, and the way that we're teaching through the different kinds of studies and readings that we're doing and the projects that we're doing, um, we are beginning to, that's becoming more and more of a normalized thing to see in a university or a college. So in this work that I'm sharing with you today, um, it's about the realizations that I've had and the work that I'm doing to make those north-south connections. Because, you know, one thing I realized, along with other people from my community, is that we think we are in relationship with the natural world. We think we have a close relationship, but when you go to a place like a mountain community of Paru Paru in Peru, you realize very quickly that we don't, that we are disconnected. And so for me, the work that I'm doing now relates to everything that I've kind of built towards this point, but it's all about communicating the land as relation. So it started, a long time ago, for way further back than 2014. Um, but through my doctoral work, I I was interviewing the women. I did work on how women in Kahnawake communicate their Kanien'kehá:ka identity. And throughout the interviews, they would talk about Sky Woman as though she was in the room. And I thought, okay, I think I have to revisit this story. I knew it from the children's books I'd shared with my children. I saw it painted in murals on walls and in paintings like this one here by Oizoko. And I thought, okay, there's something here. So when I went back to look at it, I saw there was 32 or 33 different versions of it. Not different, but written versions of it. And I went, okay, I'm still not feeling it. So I saw that there was all the common elements, themes, characters in the stories, the versions of it, the written versions. So I pulled them out, made a list, and I wanted to understand what she was feeling and thinking. So I started to rewrite the story in the first person. And that's the difference, is those stories are all in the third person. It happens to her over there. She falls. We see her fall, but we never know what she's thinking. And so when I rewrote the story in the first person, I included my own perspective and experiences as a woman of my community, as a mother, auntie, sister. I included the perspectives and the knowledge that the women of my study had shared with me, and I rewrote that story, and it became the basis for my theory and my method in my work. And then in 2014, I was invited to a conference at USask called Performing Turtle Island. And I took a small part of that story and I performed it. I was her. I embodied her. And so here, these are the pictures from that telling. And after that, I was asked to perform it in different places. And each time I found that people would come up to me after, and they would be crying, or they would, and they express this very deep emotion and connection to Sky Woman and to the story. And I thought, there's something there. This story particularly has this ability to make people feel. So I continued with that, and I've been performing it ever since. And I've been taking note of all the kinds of responses. And in fact, I've written about this in a couple pieces. What does it mean to embody her? What does it mean when we tell these stories? What is it about that storytelling? What is it about that story? And so this work actually led me to work with one of my a student during she graduated during COVID. So she asked me to be one of her advisors on her doctoral work looking at Ganyegeha place names. She's non-Indigenous. And after her thesis was done, after she defended, we decided to put together a project um, called the Atlas of Ganyegehaga Space. And what it is um, where we have a map that is created through the Nunalite system, which was developed at Carleton University. And what we started to do was we got money, a couple grants now, where we went into community and we taught young people how to use this atlas. So this what's particular about this atlas is that it's not owned at all by Apple or Google. It's an atlas that's created from satellite images that are cut and put together. And all of the content is you can put in language, media, film, PDFs. You can tell stories and record them. So what we ended up doing was teaching young people how to do this. They could take their phone and go home and record either in video or photographs or recording of their elders talking about a certain place in their community. And so we traveled around through Taintaneka, Akwesasne, Kahnawake, Wahta, and we've been teaching people how to use this atlas and put their own information in. And the beauty of this is that it belongs to the Mohawk people. So only Mohawks who have a code, a password, and a username can put stuff into this map, into this atlas. And so this is a form of land-based learning. Um, because what this does is it's about you can use it for different things. You can use it for preserving and recording language around spaces and places in our different territories. Um, you can also, like if you look on the map, there's a certain these are layers, so you can create different layers that you can put information in. So let's say the biodiversity of the area, and you can put in that kind of information and it's protected so that only community folks know where these things are. Um, but also what it does is if you take away all of the borders and all of the roads that colonize our lands, what it leaves is this understanding, and you put in place our own our own words and concepts that we've used to describe these places. It reframes how you see the world, how you see that land. And especially for our young people who've grown up with these roadways and these borders, reserve, us and them, and all of that, it helps them to come back to a more um, grounded understanding of space and place. So we've done that, and I'm actually taking it further, and I'm going to be working with the Algonquin to create a similar atlas for them, and with them that they can then begin to populate, and it'll be owned by them. So part of that was doing land back summer camps. We did a few in Akwesasne, we did it in Tyendinaga. And what we do is we would pair young people with elders, speakers in the community, and we taught the kids how to use drones. And then when we would pair them, they would go with an elder to an area and they would document that place. And then they would put it into the atlas. So it was a way to strengthen their language. It was a way to learn about space and place, and document their community. So this is the similar format that we're going to be using with the Algonquin language. And we called it Land Back Summer Camp because it's a way for our children, our young people, to understand the land and get it back in a different way, right? As well, when one of the findings of Rebecca, the PhD student, was that um, when she was looking and trying to figure out, she would mine like different kinds of maps and old documents and whatnot to populate her understanding of Indigenous Kanien'kehá:ka place names. One of the things that we realized through the work we were doing with the Atlas was that in order to understand places, you have to be sitting on the water, the names for our places. So when we would take, in this picture, you can see we had elders go onto the water with us, and they would be able to, you can see what our ancestors saw and why they would call it that name. And also places have multiple names for different, because they had different uses. So in the Western mapping tradition, places have one name, but for our tradition, there's multiple names, and in order to understand them, you have to be sitting on the water, especially. And so we went out on the St. Lawrence River to do that. So the first, so in 2023. I was invited to go to Peru with one of my colleagues, Jake Chikashim, who is Cree, and he's an architecture professor. And what he does is an Indigenous architecture studio. And what he does is he looks at the Indigenous built environment. And that's where I was introduced to Paru Paru in Potato Park, which is a community there. What we did was we spent 2 weeks and we worked collectively with the community to build a greenhouse. We learned about, the different kinds of herbs and plants that they eat and they use, also about the coloring of the weaving, the textiles. In turn, I taught them, as you can see, how to make Iroquois cornbread. Because they have all these same ingredients that we have. And so my job there was to make that north-south connection. That's why he had invited me along. And I felt a really deep connection to place there. And I realized there that, we are not of the land anymore. Especially, in the more southern communities like Kahnawake or Six Nations, we've kind of lost touch. We don't live like that anymore. And I think that deep connection, that deep understanding, or that deep lived experience isn't there, and our youth are suffering as a result. So I'm going to share a little bit of a video with you. I want to show you. This is what we filmed. Can you hear it? Put your thumb up.
I love mountains. I love the landscape, and just have the opportunity to trek through what I consider to be like one of the most beautiful places. I've always really been interested in cultures and people and geography. I've always had a passion for it. And this was just a great opportunity for me to learn about the world.
Hello, everybody. Today we are in Tambo Machai. Tambo, Quechua word. What does mean Tambo? Resting place.
The idea of an Indigenous pedagogy, we've practiced it for millennia, but bringing it into the institution and teach it to our colleagues, the non-Indigenous educators, that is something that is only just now emerging in institutions across Canada.
My name is Jake Chikazam, Carleton University professor down here in Cusco, Peru, delivering an Indigenous option studio. Coming down here to Peru, to me, was a beautiful experience. I want the students to see a different perspective in terms of how Indigenous communities work with the land.
The role that Indigenous knowledge relates to design and architecture, it is about drawing knowledge from the land, finding the right kinds of stones, and finding the right kind of purpose for the materials.
They treat the land like it is a living thing, but they actually treat it that way.
Really important to think about and teach about what are the things that we have, what are the strengths that we have remaining, and what are the things that we can build upon, because those grains of knowledge, of traditional knowledge, are still there.
When you see that kind of architecture where every stone is helping each other, it's a way of representing the Indian community, how every single human being in the community is helping each other in the Aini system. Aini means I help you today, you help me tomorrow.
I think it's really shaped how I think about land-based learning, that you need to be receptive of what a local community does on that land.
One of the reasons why we came down here, to observe, to explore, and to ask these deeper questions about community and culture and people that are different from ourselves. That's the premise of this course, learning to design from a place of difference. Watching the students connect with the community at different levels was really nice to see.
The idea is that architecture should always understand nature, and it should obey the rules of nature. You cannot go against those laws.
So, whoops. So this was something that led into another trip, another excursion that summer. So that original trip was in February. And then we went in the summer of 2024 with Mohawks. I brought people from some of my family. I brought other Mohawks that wanted to go. I brought a Cree, and they wanted to. When I had come back that first time from Peru, I was telling my sister, who you can see in the bottom left corner, about this trip. And she said, and I said, one of the biggest things I've learned is that we are not of the land. And so she said, I want to see what you saw. So we went back. I brought them for 2 weeks. And we ended up doing a sharing of knowledge, north-south, making that real north-south connection. And what the people from our community came to realize is that Paru Paru is where our community was 100 years ago. So they are struggling to maintain language, culture, and their young people are leaving and going into the city. They're concerned, and they are where we were. And so we were able to work with them and show them a little bit about ourselves. They were very, very generous in doing ceremonies with us, and the ceremonies that they do are very similar to what we do. And we do this thing called the Ahonto Gari Watekwa, which is the words that come before all else. It's the Thanksgiving address. And the very first thing that they did with us was they did a very similar ceremony. But it's not only just words, it's actually you put together, and the words are put into these objects that are then put into a bundle that is burned. And that's the offering to our mother, Pachamama, as they call her. And so we were seeing a lot of similarities, and we were sharing. And you can try it. Introduce yourself. A little bit. Esto vamos a sacar. Esto color. Oh. Bernard, you should try it. So one of the things, and here we brought wampum belts, and we were telling the stories of our people through these belts. And they were so interested in understanding. And I think one of the imprints that we left, and we were very cognizant of not trying to help them build upon what they were already doing and not changing anything. So we were showing them through our belts and through our stories and our songs, and we were showing them that we are still here. Even though a lot of our language is gone, our ceremonies were greatly impacted, our our way of living close to the earth is not the same anymore. We are still here and we can still tell these stories. We can still communicate through these belts. And I think that that was the biggest impact. So, and when everyone came back, that they realized, they had the same realization that we are not where we were. We are not as close to the earth, but it really was deeply meaningful for them to share in what we had together. So we in the evenings we would dance and we would sing and they would sing and they would dance, and it was really, really wonderful. I brought my youngest with me. We had the opportunity to work with them in the school, and we took the time, to understand and share how we were all surviving ongoing colonialism. So then I offered a course with Indigenous students only, where we went back to Peru last February, and I called it Land as Relation. It was a land-based learning class. And what I wanted them to do was to connect and appreciate land as relation, because they are Indigenous folks and students from Canada, but I don't think that they'd ever had the opportunity to engage with another Indigenous group, especially down in South America. And so I wanted them to really begin to understand what is land as relation, what is land-based learning, and what does it mean elsewhere in the world. And one of the biggest things that they realized is that we are not alone. They really felt connected. They felt like they were part of that community. The community was really generous once again. It's the same community, the same families. They take us in. We do what we can around the community. We pay them for the food and the accommodation, of course, and we work with them, doing what we can. And both, we've gone back and we've built a ceremonial structure for them or with them along the lake, and in that we've shared our stories, our songs, and our dances. So it's been very meaningful again. And it's all about living with the Pachamama. Here you can see some of the things that we did. We went to a coffee plantation. There's the beginning of the ceremonial structure by the lake. We went to Rainbow Mountain. We hiked in the mountains, looked at the potato fields way up high. It was really about having the students understand what land as relation means there. So then when I got back, I had already put into play this project, which was making this 360 longhouse. So we have a 360 camera that we have, the guys were learning how to use it for this project. And we went to this the Seneca Longhouse in Ganandagan, which is in Victor, New York. Victor, New York. Oh, I'm going to show you. I hope I can. Can you see this? No. Okay. So what I'm going to do is this. Okay. I'm going to show. Whoops, wrong one. All right. Let me go back to screen sharing. There we go. Okay, I'll just do my desktop. That way I can show everything. How's that? All right. So maybe you can see this. Here's the original. This is a 360 camera. This is what it can do, right? So you can look around. Some of you may have had experiences. You look up, look down. And this is at Ganandagan. So this is a replica longhouse post-contact. Okay. So when we went there, whoops. we took we filmed using this VR experience for a pedagogical tool for use in the classroom. And so what it does is it takes you in, and you are the person that all these people in the longhouse are talking to. So you're taken through the experience of preparing corn and making cornbread with women and in the longhouse. You're also taken through a ceremony at the very beginning called At the Wood's Edge, which is all about acknowledging and accepting someone who has come, a visitor. And so then this is now just being used. We did a soft launch in August, and it's now being used in, I think, 4 or 5 classrooms this fall. And we're teaching faculty how to use this. And so this is a way of bringing people into our world. So we can't go and take all of our students down to Victor, New York when we want to teach them. But what we can do is help them to make that connection to our world through technology like VR. Because videos are one-dimensional. This one is actually there's an immersion that happens. And it's related back to what I was doing with the storytelling. The Sky Woman performance was, there would be responses from people because they felt a connection. And it's that same kind of connection that we are working to bring about in our students so that they feel and understand what it means to be in relationship. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of this background video that we prepared. It's some of the guys. I'll just show a little bit of it. We are in Seneca territory. We are at the Longhouse at Ganandagan Historical Site. And we're really excited because we're starting our filming today for the virtual reality Longhouse.
Six lenses in all directions at the same time. Finally at the Longhouse, production day 1.
10 months in the making, Kia reminded me of
10 months. Static first day. Also, we have walkie-talkies, and the walkie-talkies are fun.
Yeah, day 1 is in the can.
So I found out recently, that in the last year that we have the capability in the university to do virtual reality. And I said, I have always wanted to do a virtual reality longhouse to bring students into our world rather than us having to always engage and be in the spaces of the colonizer. To bring students here, I would love to, but we can't bring everybody here. Why not bring this longhouse that exists here at Ganandagan to our students at Carleton and beyond?
Our goal with this experience, in consultation with the cultural liaisons here at Ganandagan, to create more of a narrative approach rather than just, here we are at the Longhouse, let's talk about it and show stuff. We took the approach of having the viewer who is wearing the VR headset be a visitor who has come through the woods and arrived at the Longhouse and is greeted by the Seneca guards and escorted up to the Longhouse and then walked through the process with sort of a clan mother of processing corn. We hope by just showing rather than telling in an immersive environment that the viewer will get a really good sense of what it's actually like to be here, to come visit.
Yawis ke swagwego, titoyo ni jaso, onandawat gania, ne atayo ni My name is Ansley Jemison. I am the cultural liaison here at Ganondagan State Historic Site. I'm a member of the Seneca Nation of the Wolf Clan, originally from the Allegheny Territory in what is now Western New York. So this one I've been a little bit behind the scenes, which has been kind of fun for me and a little bit different. Might be all right to use. I don't know if they have.
Do you want to mix it in a wooden bowl?
Yeah.
If you got that, we can do that.
Yeah. Doing more advisement work and also site locations and things like that. And then also maybe a little bit of the set design.
The collar actually serves more so as like a thermal break. So when you have to go in and pick this thing up, it's actually something you can kind of have and it'll hold. So yeah. So this clay pot, gets replaced by the brass kettle, which is sort of a bit of a cultural degradation and a bit of a tragedy in a way, because the artistry and the beauty of these things gets replaced by the form and function of these guys here. So there's a clay deposit down the road. I took Hazzy for a ride and he got to see the stream that they would have been traditionally harvesting from.
Kahente Yujats, Agskare Wake Ni E Kanyakahaga, Niwanjodo. So my name is Kahente Horn Miller. I am Kanyakahaga. My mother is from Ganawage, and my late father was from Six Nations. I live and work in the unceded Algonquin territory. I'm an associate professor of Indigenous Studies at Carleton University in Ottawa. I currently hold the inaugural position of Associate Vice President, Indigenous Teaching, Learning, and Research. So I get to do a lot of fun things.
Well, I'll look at back to our visitor.
Yeah.
Using the machine.
Yeah. Right now.
Machine head.
Not a Terminator.
Into the robot.
Okay. Yeah.
There's one here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Kristen Ash. I'm Seneca Wolf Clan from Cattaraugus. I have been part of our three-man team here that's been designated for assisting on Ganondagan's side for this project. Coordination, just kind of holding up our end and being the kind of glue. And acting as well. And creative. Yeah, all of the things. Yeah. Come grab a braid and find a place to sit.
Honestly, I think that's fantastic. And it's like,
so my name is Caleb Fontenelle. I'm Seneca from the Heron Clan. For me, I've been doing the behind the scenes shooting, and it's been a lot of fun using your equipment and being able to do something creative with other people as well.
Is it filming me? Oh my God. You better edit this really good too.
Behind the scenes, they're letting me use their camera. This is like a $3,000 camera.
Now I'm chopping up the wood for the second fire. And that's not to cut my hand over.
She's fishing for the ones that are floating to the top.
So it's a longer video. I will pause it there, but I just wanted to share a little bit with you to give you a background explanation and give you a better insight into what this project is all about. So what we then did was we also developed a virtual reality Indigenous learning space, which that 360 experience is part of. If you can imagine it, it's like a hallway full of doorways, and what we're going to do is connect them all. So other forms of storytelling and teaching will be included as part of this eventually. So what this is where we can bring students in to, once again, to the Haudenosaunee view of the world. And this is actually, I'm just going to show a little bit of it. I'm guiding students through medicines, and it's a very important part of our tradition. So the word is wata, wata. So heading down, we're going to go down towards the water. And you'll see another tree on the right-hand side. If you could click on that behind the bush here. Oh no, you can't see it. It's on the... So this is an experience that takes you, you can bring your students on a journey through the woods, by the water. I talk about names and the importance of place names. There's objects along the way that they can click on, plants and trees that you can learn about, where you can hear the language. And I don't mean to go so quickly, but I know we have time. So here is the village site. So what we've done is presented on we bring the card. We bring the students through the small condolence, the Woods Edge ceremony, and then they get to understand 3 strings of wampum that signify
the small condolence, which is a ceremony that we do to clear the eyes, to clear the ears, and to clear the throat. In a sense, what this whole ceremony is about is unburdening the traveler so that they can enter into the village site without any kind of stress and things that they might have witnessed or been. So this once again, the students are taken through this ceremony, much like in the 360 video. We also take them, you can take them to the Three Sisters Garden. And then also, then we go up into, I'm just gonna take you up. And this is where you have the opportunity, the students have the opportunity to go into the village and go into the longhouse and look at other objects and things. Enter into the longhouse. So follow me. So they can look if you look around, you can see the structure, how it's created. There are multiple. This is used that now it's being used by faculty. We've included different readings, different pieces of external content that will support their using it as a teaching tool. And so we have a biology professor using it for the biology. She's having her students work on creating more knowledge and content that will supplement what we already have about the plants and trees that are in the VR experience. It can be used by architecture to look at structures. And so these are used across disciplines. So we've had student feedback already on the use. They felt that, everything that the people in the video was in the 360 video, especially were very welcoming. That they said, it was a unique experience. And I think we're going to see more and more different kinds of reactions from our student and our faculty as they use it. And so this is now being used in different courses. So as I said before, one of the projects that I am starting now is the Algonquin Place Names Atlas. I'm also involved in a grant application where we're looking at the personhood and documenting the personhood of the St. Lawrence River. And also another thing is I'm putting together a book proposal on how Indigenous stories help us to fight climate change. So this is a new thing, but an old thing, something I've been thinking about for quite some time. And I hope to be able to write it out into a book for use. So the power of our stories are immense, and it's brought me on this journey where I'm able to tell this story to you, what it means to have this north-south connection, and what that means to different people that I've brought along the way. So that's what I have to share. And I'm going to stop sharing here. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thank you. I do want to open up the floor for questions. I wrote some down as we were going. So if nobody wants to be a brave soul, I'm sure I can draw. Oh, Zabine.
Yeah, totally. Wow. So I can't help but respond from a personal way first. So I feel like a lot of what you shared today really reflects a lot of the privileges I had in my undergrad in religion and culture at Wilfrid Laurier University. Before we just started this talk, we mentioned that LD and myself both had the chance to go do a field trip to Santiago de Cuba with Michel Desjardins. Just before I went to Cuba, I went on a 3-month trip with a professor named Doris Jacobs to India. It was a really interesting point in religious studies to think about engaged learning. What is the role of participant observation? How do we teach students more ethnographic approaches, in the study of religion, rather than just like stats How do we get to see that as a site of cultural exchange?
Mhm.
So this feeling that you're bringing up in me is like a nostalgic one
Yeah.
that now as I teach at the University of Winnipeg, something that I've been really eager to bring to the students here. And one of the interesting things about that trip, which ties into something that you're sharing in this story, was my relationship to religion, sacred geography, and climate change. Had the chance to stay in different farms when I was in India and learn about. I had the chance to visit Vandana Shiva's farm to learn about biodiverse farming and seed protection, and which is really instrumental in my work now on Punjabi Sikhs and their understanding of separatism of Punjab as a separate state and how that's tied to their agricultural practices. And I'm connecting these things in ways that I wouldn't have been able to had I not had these experiences. And so I do a lot of work now on religion and climate change. That's a big focus of mine, both personally and academically.
Mhm.
And so I mentioned the place that I'm at because Winnipeg is a really interesting place. It's an
Mhm.
indigenous urban center. Um, it's also one of the poorest provinces, cities in the country. So it's also one of the fastest growing international populations in Canada with the fastest growing Punjabi community. So this is like a new place for me, a new site of research for myself.
Mhm.
But I'm sure you've heard about our wildfires.
Yeah.
And you think of the pandemic, you think of the wildfires, you think of the poverty that you might see here. You see the fentanyl cases, things like this. So
Mhm.
it makes me think about what it means to have engaged learning experiences when you see the ugly side of climate.
Yep.
And how do we have engaged learning? Like when I was in India on that 3-month trip, we got caught in monsoon season, and the place that we stayed at was completely flooded. I wasn't
Mhm.
expecting to swim back to my residence from a rickshaw ride that I was on.
Mhm.
So it's this reality that is very close now. It's not somewhere else. We're experiencing these things here.
Yeah.
So I guess I appreciate the multimodal kind of aspects of your teaching. I'm also teaching a digital religion class as a way to make these kinds of engaged learning experiences more accessible.
Mhm.
Especially when we have to deal with climate conditions. There's no way I can take my students to Punjab right now. It would
Mhm.
be really difficult. The violence, the protesting, the environmental components, the risk of visas and international students getting
Yep.
deported, the government attacking Sikh activists from Canada. So how do we bring these kinds of engaged learning experiences through the digital in a particular location that you can't, there's no way you can ignore the indigeneity of Winnipeg. And if you are, you're delusional, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So how do you do all of that? And I guess so that's like I guess I wonder how you think about that, like as you approach this climate change work, or um, it's one thing to go to a place that's peaceful and learn pottery and farming, but what happens when their village goes on fire, or
Mhm.
like, how do we deal with these realities? Yeah.
Well, you know, we we don't see the impacts firsthand of um, the heavy rains or when there's drought, right? But we do have stories to share about those things that we can relate to, the impacts of what happens. So, for example, when we were building the on the first year that we went and we were building the greenhouse, the greenhouse was used because of um, the impacts of climate change on the growth patterns of different kinds of fruits and vegetables, right? It's uncertain. For example, in my own porch right now, I've got another set of raspberries growing. Second one. That's really odd, right? We had such hot weather here. It's created another growth spurt. So it's things like that that it's so unpredictable. But we do have the stories we can share. And I think, that's what it's all about is connecting through the stories, connecting through those, because those stories are about lived experiences, right? And that's what the power of those stories lies in our ability to share. Like I call it our superpower is that despite everything else that was taken away from us, we still have our stories and we can still tell them to each other. And that's a superpower, you know? So, I think as we go on, um, creating different kinds of content, creating different kinds of experiences for our students, whether we do it in person or virtually, um, each one has its own impact, right? And I see value because at the root of it is that willingness to teach our students about another way of being in relationship with the world, or even for the first time, what that means, being in relationship with the world, with the natural world, right? I don't know if I answered your question, but I certainly tried.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
That was a wonderful first question, and now I'm kind of scared to ask mine. Uh, I have background I'm a tenured high school teacher just outside of Kitchener-Waterloo, and I've done a lot of environmental education. And I remember once I was helping with the grade 3 curriculum, and I was doing the program as delivered, and this was pretty early on in my career. And I had this little 8-year-old girl come to me and say, David, like, do Indigenous people still live at Laurel Creek today? And that's when I had a moment of the education system has failed.
Mm.
Like, we really need to
Yeah.
do better. So now, like, I believe it's still covered in the grade 3 curriculum, but I'm more of a high school teacher. And now the grade 11 English curriculum is the Indigenous NBE course. And
Mm.
I'm curious, with all the tools that you've created and worked on, have they been rolled out at the high school level at all, or is that something you've been looking at, or is it mostly university facing?
Right now, it's mostly university facing, but there's something. So I've been doing this project called Collaborative Indigenous Learning Bundles, and that's actually what I was recognized for the 3M National Teaching Fellowship, and then the year after for the Steely Award through the work that I'd shared with Western University. They began to make their own collaborative bundles as well. And one of the things that I've been um, trying to think through is how do we share this kind of knowledge without making it for sale, right? Because Indigenous knowledge is not for sale. And the whole work behind the bundles was to um, create them to address the TRC call to action on bringing more Indigenous content into our classrooms. And so I thought, well, that's needed everywhere, elementary, high school, college, and not all institutions have the same kinds of resources that we do, but they can certainly learn how to create something similar. These bundles are actually used across the university at Carleton. Gosh, like over 40,000 students have engaged with them since we started creating them. There's 17 now. We have more that we're making. Um, but I've been teaching other institutions how to make them. But obviously, these institutions are limited in terms of financial considerations, the kinds of tools that we have at Carleton to make these things. So I've been thinking about, well, how do we make this available outside our institution? And one of the things I have considered is the idea of um, a subscription model where other institutions can use these bundles and they pay a fee, and that fee goes towards ensuring that communities, high schools and elementary schools have access to the bundle and the equipment that's needed to connect them to the bundles. And then the money can also be used to continue to create bundles and more content. So that's something I've been considering. And we haven't gotten that far on that yet, but I'm taking it in slow steps to figure out if that is ethically sound, right? So that's the kind of thing that I'm doing. And I've already talked to the school board, the biggest school board here in Ottawa, about making their own, but didn't go anywhere because they don't have the same resources that we do at Carleton to do that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. More questions from the floor. I see Ken checking his notes.
I have lots of questions. I wanted to leave space for other people. Thanks for noticing, David. Yeah, I don't know how many of these I want to just sort of throw at you. Maybe two quickly. One question I had, because you started talking about your language and the verb-based language. So I'm kind of wondering if it's something sort of similarities and differences, or if to what extent you know this with the community in Peru, if there are similar sort of things in their language, or if there are different things, or if there are things about their language that surprised you that you learned. And then the second big question was simply responses so far. I'm thinking mainly from students, but also maybe educators to using the VR materials.
Yeah, so I don't know any Quechua. I have to rely on our translator. But I'm trying to learn Spanish because the people in the community do speak Spanish, but for the most part, the younger people do. So I really don't know, but I believe that it is the same kind of structures where they don't have nouns. It's all verb based. That's something, each time I go, I learn something new. So maybe that'll be something I'll learn about this time. In terms of your other question, which was
responses to the VR
that's right.
teaching
So
materials. Yeah.
when throughout the summer we did a series of workshops with professors who were interested in learning more about it, just as testing. So we had them come in and we brought them through both experiences, the 360 and the VR experience. And I was watching for what we wanted actually was for them to give us feedback. Okay, does it make sense? What else do you need? If you're going to use this in your class, what else will you need to make this a robust and good experience for you, where you feel comfortable teaching with it? And then also on the other side of things, I was looking for the kind of connection someone might have on a personal level to the content. And it was interesting to hear faculty say, well, I felt something. I felt very connected. I felt like I was standing by the water and I just wanted to stay there. Because when you're in the VR experience, there's all kinds of birds and you can hear, the sound of the wind and things like that. And being in that experience makes them feel connected to spaces that they may have grown up in or traveled to or camped out or whatnot. And I thought that was very interesting that it has that ability to do that. And then on the other side of things, they're excited to use it as a teaching tool. They're scared, but we've been trying to provide as much content as we can outside of, so whether it's readings on at the Wood's Edge ceremony and what does that mean to give them better understanding when they go through it, the structure of a traditional village site, what does that mean? Those palisades, what are those about? Some of the plants. We've created a database of all different kinds of trees and plants that are included in the virtual reality so they understand. And then they also understand why they're what they're used for, and also what the Ganyageha or the Seneca word is for that. So we've tried to ensure that people feel comfortable, much like what we did of Indigenous learning bundles, where after the TRC, people were like, yeah, I want to bring more Indigenous content into the classroom, but I don't know how to do that without feeling like I'm appropriating. And so once again, we're trying to make it possible for people to use what we're giving them and feel comfortable and supported when we do that. One of the things that we do around every Indigenous pedagogical development that we have at Carleton is we create community. And that's hugely important for doing these kinds of things is we will always invite our faculty who've used the bundles or used the VR or the 360 to come back at the end of term and engage with each other on what worked, what didn't work, how did it go? And then those and faculty who haven't used them yet but are interested can sit with them and they learn from each other. So we invite them back after every single term. And that's been really important for creating a community around the use and the creation of these products and these things that we do for our faculty. And I
That's
think
really cool. That kind of reminds me of the opening conversation about like the basic things that the universities aren't doing. And it feels like often when projects are launched, it's a bit like that. Like there's this excitement around the new thing. And then, okay, that's done. Let's do
yeah,
the next new thing. And so this sort of languishes and there's no caretaking.
yeah,
So this feels very, yeah,
yeah.
obviously very mindful
Always,
and
always we follow through, we
yeah.
continue, and we get ideas for other content for especially like for the bundles. We get other ideas. What do you think you would need? And so one of the things that's come out of that is we are creating what we call weaving pieces. Um, so they are smaller, maybe 10 or 15 minutes of content about, let's say, 256 reserves in Canada. Where are they situated? What is a reserve? So it might be 10 or 15 minutes that one can append to a bundle. So if you need that extra content, you can add that. And we're going to do it on different things. So
Nice.
it becomes, mix and match where you can take that
Yeah.
weaving piece and use it to support what you're teaching in the course. And most of you don't know what these bundles are, but what we've done is we have created a resource where it's not just something we hand over. We actually teach our faculty how to bridge the content of a bundle and the content of their course so that Indigenous knowledge then becomes relevant to their subject area. And so they're used across disciplines because of that. They can, yeah. So go ahead.
Thank you so much. Settler Aldia Mulhern here in Manitoba, southern Manitoba, Brandon, where I'm kind of making my new home and learning the land here and the people here. And I'm not sure that I have this exactly as a question.
Okay.
But a few things came out, many things, but in particular, I think these three might fit together. And I'm wondering if that bounces anything for you. Um, I have these three relationships. One to an Islamic food and environmentalist organization in Ontario, one to a Jewish environmental and food community in Ontario, and then one to my dear friends and colleagues, but particularly David Walsh, working with the Clean Chandene North.
Okay.
And when you were speaking about the indigenizing and climate change and tapping into our knowledges about right relationship to the earth, some things were coming up for me in that in terms of St. Lawrence River's personhood and caribou personhood, and Clean Chandene kind of speaking back to the Canadian government about climate change and saying that's not how we bring the caribou back. This is how we bring the caribou back. The caribou are people with us, and here's what our relationality is on the one hand, and the total lack of uptake on the question of whether there was such a thing as an Islamic indoor environmentalism. Before the pandemic, the academic community was like not at all interested in that question initially. And there were people working on it, like trying, but who are immigrants, and who don't have tons of resources or tons of access to land. And it seemed like the VR as a space of land engagement like is more interesting than people just might not know as much yet about what healthy technological relationship looks like, because that's something that we need too. Tech is not the environment. So this is the existence of this as a model. And then on the Jewish piece of things, the idea that we might desire certain relationships, and this is linked to Sabine's question, I think, but it might not be the right time. Right? If there's illness in the land or in the community, then we maybe want to maintain our relationships, of course, because we're not, it's not an extractivist model, but that our different things are invited from us in relationship to each other during times of fire, during times of flood, and those stories. I don't know if there's a thread that connects those pieces, but they seem like those communities aren't the same community. But there seems to be something about story and bringing out some of the wisdoms that we clearly need. And the technologically mediated piece, which is one that sometimes folks are really turned away from, as if tech can't help us have healthy relationship with land. But I think what you've shown us is sort of the opposite of that.
Yeah, one of the things I think we have to be mindful of, and we're just at the beginning stages of that, is the impacts of AI on different things that. So for example, our identity, I've just begun to go down this rabbit hole, maybe is the best way to describe it. There's a group in the United States calling themselves the Republic of Iroquois Ungwahumwe, and they've taken our culture, our symbols, our history, and they're using it to manufacture their own legitimacy. And they're Black. They're Black, a group, and they say they have just as much right to call themselves indigenous to this lands as we do, but they're using our knowledge, our symbols, our great law to do that. And they've done that through AI. They've created their website, and it's appropriation at its worst, right? To try to legitimize themselves. And so I think things like that are happening, and we have to be very mindful of it. That's why I'm very conscious. We don't allow, the videos that are part of our bundles project or this VR experience or 360 experience outside the bounds of our university, the protected environment there, right? A lot of times for that reason, right? Anything you put out there is going to be mined. And so we don't want that to happen. And I think that's the awareness of that, the implications of that, and having a say as Indigenous peoples worldwide on what happens to our data and how it is used and how we are, our symbols and everything that's out there already is appropriated or used, is we have to have a say. And I think these are the things that, we have to have these conversations. We have to start now, I mean, it's in line with what you're talking about, but these are some of the concerns that we're encountering. Yeah.
That's very real, like to be in right relationship and the things that you were modeling when you talk about the consent. I don't think that's the word that you used, but the idea of, having check-ins and seeing how people are experiencing things and really making this a means of community and connection. It's
Yeah.
always, and if that breaks, that can be held and there can be a future where it's brought together again. If
Yeah.
that's like, this is the work.
Yeah. It's using indigenous philosophy, especially, my people, we are part of the Haudenosaunee, the Confederacy, right? And it's rooted and founded in the idea of peace building and acknowledging each other's differences and respecting each other's differences, but coming together for peace. And when you put that as the basis of something, of anything that you do, and you try to build from that, it's going to have the right foundation, right? So that's what we did with this. Everything that I do is founded in that idea. I always bring who I am and where I come from and what I know and experience and into everything that I do. So, yeah.
That was
Can I
beautifully
ask a
said.
question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I was hidden behind my camera because I had to cook today at home. So I was taking my lunch. Kahente, thank you so much for your presentation, for sharing your experience. I am from Peru, and I have lived for 1 year just beside Paru Paru.
Oh,
You may have known Amaru, the community of Amaru,
Amaru?
right
Yeah.
beside the Paru Paru.
Yeah.
So I appreciate a lot what you have presented. Excuse me, my name is Jorge Legoas. I am now in Mexico, but I live in Canada. I teach at Queen's University. Um, I, um, I want you I want to ask you if you can expand on a couple of things.
Mhm.
Um, how was received, what was the reaction or the response of the community to the implementation of this wonderful atlas of names and the implement?
Oh, my people? The Mohawk Atlas?
Yeah, not in Paru Paru, yeah, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is here in Canada, right? So how was the response of the community to the implementation of this atlas? That is
Mhm.
question. And
Mhm.
the second one, you said that people of Paru Paru are like we were, I don't know if you said 10 years ago or 100 years ago, maybe. So
Mhm.
I would like you to expand a little bit on
Okay.
this, because I'm sure you don't mean something like colonial opinions about indigenous people are as we were 100 years ago.
No, 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 no.
So I'm completely sure you don't mean that. So I
No.
want to expand on what sense you find these
Sure.
similarities to 100
Yeah.
years ago.
Okay. So, and your first question, about the Atlas of Ganyakahaga space, um, every time that we have presented it or done a workshop with community, um, they they see the power of it because you can put our own language in there, right? And it's a tool that you can use your phone and you can put that. You can go home and you can talk to your elders and you can say, take me to where you used to harvest the black ash and tell me about that, and let's document that. And then they can put it into the atlas. And so it's a slow uptake, but the youth and the elders that we've been working with see the value in that because there's multiple ways that at least the Kanien'kehá:ka communities are working towards um, preserving language and rebuilding the strength of our Kanien'kehá:ka language. And this is one out of many, right? So the value of it is seen as very it's useful because you can access and you can do it with the young people. They get it right away, right? Um, with in Paru Paru when I brought there's 9 of us. As I mentioned, there were people from my community. There was one from South Dakota and one Cree. And we were talking about, every night we would have the opportunity to chat with our hosts and whatnot. But then we would, we were always reflecting back on our community and where we were at, where we are at. So if you go through Kahnawake, if you go through Akwesasne, you go through Six Nations, you're gonna always see these big houses, small houses, poor houses, wealthy houses. You're going to see cigarette shops lining the main highway. You're going to see cannabis shops. You're going to see people driving the next biggest car. You're going to see wealth. You're going to see poverty. You're going to see community events. You're going to see language revitalization, and you're going to see it all. We were always reflecting on that when we would be walking throughout the community, going from wherever we were staying to the main building to have supper together, or going up into the mountains with some of the young people, or going to the lake to go fishing. We were always reflecting on the difference. And, we all remember, we've heard the stories of our parents and our grandparents as to what life was like a long time ago. So for my people in Kahnawake, we lived next to the St. Lawrence River, but you have the impacts of the Seaway. So the Seaway was completed in 1956, I believe. But what it did was they dug this big trench, and this was to allow those big ships to come through with the big cargo ships. And it really changed our relationship to the water, to the shorefront. We had a fishing economy, we had gardens, we had, farms, things like that, and it really had a huge impact. So we are always reflecting on that and the stories that our parents and our grandparents would tell us, the things that they passed down to us. And, people can remember those times, what it was like, passing the soup bone down the lane, right? One person buys the soup bone, it goes down the lane. The next person buys it, it goes the other way, and sharing in the resources that we had. And so we reflected on that when we were in Paru Paru, in how, this reminded us of what life was like for our people 100 years ago. And that's what I mean, is that, the way that they're living today, going into town using a taxi system or walking everywhere, going and cultivating the potatoes. And, I don't need to describe it to you, but, being, seeing that and being a part of that and getting a sense of, oh, this is maybe what my great grandparents experienced, right? And you go, okay, that was, we're seeing the difference now. We all talked about, what would it be like to bring people from Paru Paru to our community? And what we all agreed upon is that we would be very embarrassed to bring people who have everything that they need and are so vibrant and so rich in their knowledge and their relationship to the earth and so close to it, to bring them to our community and to show them how distant we are. We said we would be very embarrassed. And we agreed on that. So that's what I meant.
Thank you, Kahente.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I was about to say thank you. I don't want to leave it on such a somber note.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. Like my brother and sister's mother lives in Ganawage, and I've visited a couple times. So I understand what you mean, and like driving past places like Mixed Smokes
Yep.
or all that. And I'm curious to leave it on a positive. What positives do you think can be made, or what changes do you foresee happening, or what learning is coming from the North-South connections that we can use
Mhm.
here on Turtle Island?
Yeah. Well, I'm very aware, when I bring people there, I teach them first about ethics, that we aren't there to, make change. We're not there. We don't want to bring cell phones. We don't want to bring iPads or computers for them, for the community, unless that's something that they say they want or need. We don't want to make change. We want to just support what they're already doing, right? So the ethics of that, establishing ethical relationships, um, and and how to enter into community with with in the right way, understanding, the protocols associated with that. Um, I think, the biggest lessons that we can take away from making these kinds of connections is that um, we aren't there to make change. We're there to learn from each other. And we always have to be cognizant about not taking and taking and taking. So if you're going to engage with a family or an elder anywhere, compensate them in a way that they understand, that can be useful for them, right? For their time, for their energy. Don't just take, 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 take. Also, in terms of the VR and um, using those other kinds of tools to create those connections, I think, you know, being being creative and not being afraid to see what the possibilities are, right? So when I saw that, early on when I arrived at Carleton in 2014, I said, I wonder if there's a way that I can either bring students to Victor, New York, to the Ganondagan site, or, I always wanted to either create a video where students could learn in a longhouse, or from a longhouse. And then when they put in this whole new center at Carleton where you could have students engage using virtual reality and the headsets and whatnot, I thought, oh, yeah. And I was very excited. And I I said, let's try this, right? And so we found the money, we did it, and now to see what can become of it. But there's also that, continued willingness to go to build community around that, to ensure that we're accountable to each other as we use these. So we're teaching each other how to use these things ethically, and then also by virtue of that, teaching our students how to do these things in an ethical way, right? So it's this long-standing thing. And I think, like I said in the very beginning, we have this opportunity to teach our students the right way to be in this world, right? Beyond our own specialities, teaching our students how to be in the world in the right way and be in relationship and a community of people. So
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much.
you're very
I'm
welcome.
I'm realizing the time. So thank you so much for your generosity with your time. Zabine and I were saying like we hope that this that we have enough time and that we do this justice. So thank you so much. This was amazing. I really loved listening to your talk, and I look forward to using this and hope that other people are able to use this video in their teaching as well.
Y'all go, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.